Hello and welcome to the Following Truth Bible study on YouTube. I'm your host LJ as always. Thank you very much for joining me, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on a playback at some other time in the future. I do appreciate you taking time to watch this video. This is basically just another open discussion. If anybody would like to discuss anything, then we can do that. If not, I shall probably present something, but feel free to make comments and I'll try to interact with them. Feel free to also, if you would like, as I need to, I will put a link into the comments here, so if anybody would like to join at any time, okay, and I shall start that hopefully. So if you would like to come on and discuss anything, feel free to do so. Obviously just try and keep it polite. I'm not here to this isn't a debate, it's a discussion. So if you'd like to discuss something, please feel free to come on. You'll be welcome. So there is a comment already in the comment section, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, feel free to come on, or I shall probably present something on the textual criticism that we've been looking into over the last few videos that I've done. So we've been looking at different textual variants. So the thing that I've got for tonight, if there isn't much to deal with, it's regarding the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus. But what I will do is I am going to, I don't know if you're still here, John, or not, but I will get to this comment that you posted. And so it states, if possible, then I would like to hear your thoughts on angels one day, especially on how their looks are described. I read that some are described as wheel-like structures or wings with eyes on them. Yeah, so this is basically the vision of Ezekiel that you're describing. So the vision of Ezekiel, I have actually done a writing. It is a fascinating study. It is basically a study all on its own. So I'm not sure that I'm going to. I'll get into it on this video because that video actually really warrants a proper presentation of it. I absolutely I did a debate with a guy called Rob Rowe. So this was a few years back. It was my first debate. And it was on basically on the two powers theology. And one of the verses that he brought up in that debate, which I'd studied a little bit at the time, but he brought up this the Ezekiel passage of where basically Ezekiel is describing the vision that he is shown, and so he presented what he thought that meant. I don't think that really I gave a very good rebuttal to it, because I hadn't studied it in any great detail. But as I've said many times. Normally, one of my studies comes from somebody saying something to me, and me not having an answer, and I don't like to not have an answer to something somebody states. Obviously, there are thousands and thousands of different topics that you can bring up in the Bible. It's kind of impossible to have an answer to everything. Some people kind of claim that they'll try, and it's not that they claim to know everything, but they try to answer everything, and sometimes that answer is just not good enough. And I think that really, if you don't know the answer in a really great detail, it's probably best not to try and give some kind of random answer based on a really basic study, because the likelihood is you're just going to say something wrong, or you're going to get something incorrect. So I went in, and like I say, I didn't really know the answer to this one, so I decided to do a study onto that, onto the passage, basically the Ezekiel and Isaiah's visions that they had of God, basically. And I found it fascinating, and I absolutely loved it. And it is a video that it's really technical, and I'm sure that some people it will bore some people to death, because it's kind of not that theological, in not that it's not theological, but it's not the normal kind of thing that people delve into and study. But I think that it's an important one, and it for me, I really enjoyed studying it. So I will do a video on that. A link to the video of what video do you mean? A link to which video? Sorry, I'm not sure what link you would like. But I will do a full video on that particular study at some point in the near future, because I really enjoyed that one. So can I put a link to the video? Is that to the debate or to my video on Ezekiel, because I haven't done the video to Ezekiel's vision yet. Yeah, no, I've done the writing on it, so I can put a link to the writing that I've done, but I haven't done a video on it. But so it's up to you. I can post you the writing, or you can wait, and I'll try and do the Ezekiel one in the next week or so. If you would like me to do that, I'm happy to do a video on that particular one. But I'm also happy to put a link to my writing on the Ezekiel. Okay, all right. We'll do the video in the next week or so on Ezekiel. Okay. So yeah, if anybody would like to come on, feel free to do so. If not, I'm going to or start another discussion. Like I say, the Ezekiel one is probably going to take quite a while to go through, because it's quite a detailed study that I did of that, and that warrants its own video and its own study, to be honest. And yeah, I will do that in the next week or so. Just try to find time to be able to do it. I don't have a huge amount of time tonight, but I will be able to get through maybe an hour or so tonight, and we'll see. Right. Okay. So so basically for this one, if for this video, I'm going to go through the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus, and now I know that I'm do this quite often, but we're going to be looking at James White's book again. Some of one of the errors that that is in James White's book, and it's still there, despite the fact that actually he's wrong, and not only is he wrong, but he actually contradicts himself inside of his own book. So he hasn't updated it, but the contradiction is still there. So we're going to look at that discovery of Codex Sinaiticus. Now, when it comes to the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus, we have to. I'm gonna go with what the official kind of story is. Whether the official story is actually true or not is another thing, but we're just going to look at what is stated about it. Now, the discovery is about Codex Sinaiticus is in this book, and it's basically Codex Sinaiticus, the discovery of the world's oldest Bible. And this is written by Dr. Konstantin Tischendorf, who is the one who discovered Codex Sinaiticus. So this isn't a second passed down, or this isn't somebody repeating what has been stated about the discovery. This is from the horse's mouth, basically. This is his book about the discovery of how he discovered Codex Sinaiticus. And how James White, in his book, actually doesn't really understand the discovery itself. Okay, so in an article that can be found on James White's website, so his website is Alpha and Omega. I'm not sure what the full, but his ministry is called Alpha and Omega. And I think if you just search for Alpha and Omega Ministries, James White, you'll be able to find it. And on the website, he refers to an article by Dr. Stauffer on the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus. And so James White states, I did Dr. Right. So is this on Dr. White's page or? Yeah. So this is James White's writing. Sorry. I did a little looking around for the net for materials by Dr. Stauffer, and very quickly ran across this article, and he links to the article by Dr. Stauffer. And it took just a moment to read this. The Codex Vaticanus, discovered in the Pope's library in 1481, and Sinaiticus, discovered in 1859 in a trash can at St. Catherine's Monastery on Mount Sinai, were the two texts that influenced the Alexandrian type, or the Alexandrian text type, the most. So Dr. White further then states, any scholar who cannot get this story straight is not worth reading. So Dr. White states that any scholar that doesn't get the story about the the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus is not worth reading. So we've got Rivers coming on. Hello, sir.
Hi, LJ.
Hello.
Just checking in.
Okay. So I was basically on this at the moment. It is a completely open theology discussion, so anybody can come on at any time. I was just making do with talking about the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus, but I'm happy to continue on with that, or I'm happy to engage in anything else that you might want to discuss for now, and I can do that another time. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, I've been listening to your recent videos regarding the 1 John 5:7, Mark 16:9-20.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the one about the other issues with other texts yet, though.
Okay. Yeah. So I've just been going through, and as I've said on the videos, I'm not trying to tell anybody that this is what they must believe. I'm just going through the evidence, looking at trying to present as honestly as I possibly can the evidence, and it's up to people to make up their own minds on which way they want to go. But I think that if you read a lot of scholars, and I've pointed out James White a lot, because his book, The King James Only Controversy, is a very popular book by those that like to argue against the KJV, because he writes so much about the KJV. And what I try to say is actually, I think it's quite one-sided. His arguments are very one-sided. There's a lot more information out there that that James White doesn't present, and if you just follow his scholarship, and there are a lot of people out there who do follow James White's scholarship and take him as complete authoritative. And if you do that, then I think you get a biased view, or certainly a biased presentation of what the evidence is. And like I did, obviously you've seen John, the longer ending of Mark. I presented that for like 2 hours. James White has 3 pages of evidence that would have taken like 4 minutes to get through. But I think I presented a lot of other evidence that can be used. And yeah, if at the end of that somebody still wishes to reject the longer ending of Mark, then so be it. But at least do it on a more informed basis. That was my kind of reasoning behind all of this.
Did you see any of the discussion, LJ, on One God Report this week regarding some biblical Unitarians who are restarting the idea that the Father is the central figure in the first part of the prologue? In other words, they would take all things were made through him in John 1:3 to be referring to God the Father.
Okay. I didn't see that. I've been really engaging with Michael. Is it Giles? I'm not sure if it's his last name. Sorry. On 1 John 5:7, basically, and we've been having a bit of a back and forth regarding some of the information on there. So I haven't been interacting with that, but so this is on the One God Report, and they're the Biblical Unitarians. Is this kind of a Carlos thing, or?
No, it's actually something that came up on some Brother Kel videos. Do you know Brother Kel?
Yeah.
Trinity Delusion 8 or 10 years ago, but I don't think it picked up a lot of momentum. I occasionally run into people who want to look at the beginning of the prologue that way. But I just noticed this week there was some conversation among a couple of people who seem to be kind of reviving that idea. But I couldn't get them to go into any detail about how to make that work as the
Yeah.
prologue progresses.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly wouldn't be something that I would understand when part of the prologue to be meaning to the Father. But I take it. I don't want to assume your position on that. So
No, I don't look at it that way because I don't think you can sustain that exegetically.
yeah.
My understanding is that the word is being used as a name for the human Jesus in the prologue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we slightly disagree on that, but as I've also said many times, the prologue, while I kind of have an idea of how I think that it's what it means and stuff, I'm certainly it's probably one of the verses that I don't think that I have a settled understanding, and I've seen some good argumentation. I know that you've presented quite a lot on that. I know that you and Bill had some. I think it was Bill that you had a really good interaction with and discussion on that prologue. But yeah, I'm not too sure on. I'm not 100% on the prologue. It's one of those that I think has quite a few possibilities, and I've never settled on any specific one.
We don't have to discuss it at length. I just want to know what your perspective is on it because I don't remember. I'm sure
Yeah,
we've discussed it in the past,
it's
but I just don't remember.
so.
In general,
Yeah, I understand the word as just as literally being the literal spoken word of God. That's how I understand it. So the word is his word is him. It is part of God and it is with him as well. So I understand. That's how I understand it. I think that it probably is referring back to Genesis, but I am also, again, I'm perfectly okay if it just refers back to the beginning of like Jesus's ministry, or so to me, I wouldn't be dogmatic that it has to refer back to Genesis, because obviously we see other places where the beginning, I think Matthew and or is it Mark, talks about the beginning, and it's obviously referring to the beginning of Jesus's ministry, not to the Genesis. And I'm 100% sure that you don't believe that it's referring back to Genesis.
no, I don't believe it's alluding to Genesis at all. But that changes the whole context of the prologue. That's what makes it really interesting, because if you don't take the position that it's alluding to Genesis, then because there's such a difference in the historical context, then that all the language would have to be applied to, it really makes a difference on how you read through it and look at it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one that I think that I mean, obviously being on the one God report and Trinities and stuff on this is how obviously I've become acquainted with many of the Unitarians out there, such as yourself. But it is a topic that I do enjoy discussing, but it's certainly not one that is my focal point. I love textual criticism, as probably people are aware of by now. But yeah, it's the one God discussion on the Trinity and stuff is something that I do enjoy, but it doesn't take up a huge amount of my time anymore. I did start off doing it, and I've met some really nice people, really good people doing that particular thing, but I actually prefer the textual criticism side of things. So we've lost Rivers. I don't know if he'll come back at any point, but at this moment he's not here. So yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna until possibly Rivers comes back and we get into something else, a discussion on something else. I will continue on with the discussion or the regarding the finding of Codex Sinaiticus. Again, feel free to interrupt and come on and discuss, or put something into the comments, and I'll try to engage in that. But at the moment, I'll just carry on. So James White. So actually, his website, I do have a link. I do have his website. It's www.aomin. So that's Alpha and Omega Ministries, aoministries.org. And you can go on and have a look at that there. And he states, basically, I'm sorry, but any scholar who can't even get this story straight is not really worth reading, to be honest. I remember correcting Dave Hunt on this very same error a few years ago in St. Louis. Sure, it is common to say this, but repeating an error does not make it true. And for someone who claims the level of expertise necessary to write a book on the translation of the Bible and the issues of the King James Version, should surely know better than to repeat errors like this. What is worse, he cites from my book frequently, which means he knows this statement is factually untrue. Here is the section from my work, and then so then we've got the link. However, James White, in his book, The KJV Only Controversy, wrote, and I quote, Tischendorf embarked on a journey to the Middle East in 1844, searching for biblical manuscripts. While visiting St. Catherine's Monastery on Mount Sinai, he noticed some parchment scraps in a basket that was to be used to stoke the fires in the monastery's oven. In the footnotes, he actually states, if you're wondering why these scraps would be in a trash can, the answer is the ancient books, be they made of papyrus or vellum, decay over time. Bits of pages, the final or initial pages of a codex, were very subject to loss. They would, over time, find their way to the floor and need to be picked up to avoid a real fire hazard. So it would seem that Dr. White was in fact fully aware that the manuscript was found in a trash can, ready to be burned, and simply contradicted himself. Constantine van Tischendorf himself wrote that on his first visit to St. Catherine's Monastery in 1844, that he had come across the pages of what he perceived as being a copy of the Old Testament in Greek in a basket ready for the flames. Tischendorf states that he was allowed to purchase 45 sheets of this manuscript. And he states on page 28 of when were our Gospels written? I perceived in the middle of the great hall a large and wide basket full of old parchments, and the librarian, who was a man of information, told me that 2 heaps of paper like this, mouldered by time, had been already committed to the flames. What was my surprise to find amid this heap of papers a considerable number of sheets of a copy of the Old Testament in Greek, which seemed to me to be one of the most ancient that I had ever seen. The authorities of the covenant allowed me to purchase myself of a third of these parchments, or about 45 sheets, all the more readily as they were destined for the fire, but I could not get them to yield up possession of the remainder. So this is Constantine van Tischendorf stating himself that the codex that he spotted was to be burned. They were going to burn it. Now, we can get into why, if the manuscript was going to be burnt, why would they not allow him to purchase the whole manuscript, the whole thing? Why they would only allow him to purchase 45 pages, and why 45 pages? Why would they allow him to purchase any of it at all? Is it kind of either all of it or none of it? It seems a bit strange, but we're gonna take the story as if Tischendorf is telling the truth. Now, Tischendorf named these pages Codex Frederico Augustus, and they were taken to Leipzig University. The pages of the manuscript are still there, so you can still see the Codex Sinaiticus at the Leipzig University. They are, in fact, quires 35.1 to 37.3 and 47 to 49. And that is Codex Sinaiticus. Now, these certainly not the final or initial pages of a codex, as Dr. White asserted pages in a trash can would be. So they're not the end parts or the beginning parts of the manuscript. They're kind of the inner parts of the manuscript. Now, Dr. White continues on to state, upon examining them, he discovered they contained part of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. This was exactly what he was looking for. So he asked if he could take the scraps to his room for further examination, warning the monks not to be burning such items. Now, again, Dr. White shows that he is aware that these were part of the manuscript, and in fact were exactly what he, Tischendorf, was looking for. He was looking for old manuscripts. But while referring to Tischendorf's third visit to the monastery in 1859, okay, this is 15 years after 1844, when Tischendorf first discovered this manuscript, James White further states, from the closet in his cell, he produced a manuscript, wrapped in red cloth. The monk had no idea of the treasure in his hands, for this was none other than Codex Sinaiticus, which at the time was at least 1,500 years old. So this was 15 years after Tischendorf had visited in 1844. He also visited again in 1853, but to no avail there. Now, although this part is accurate, when we look at Tischendorf's own written attestation of this event, it must be noted that Tischendorf himself states that included in the manuscript that the monk showed him were the very fragments he had seen 15 years prior in the basket. This was not mentioned by Dr. White. As we returned, so this is Tischendorf stating this, sorry. As we returned towards sunset, he begged me to take some refreshment with him to his cell. Scarcely had he entered the room when, resuming our former subject of conversation, he said, "And I too have read a Septuagint, i.e. a copy of the Greek translation made by the 70. And so saying, he took down from the corner of the room a bulky kind of volume wrapped up in a red cloth, and laid it before me. I unrolled the cover and discovered, to my great surprise, not only those very fragments which 15 years before I had taken out of the basket, but also other parts of the Old Testament, the New Testament complete, and in addition, the Epistle of Barnabas and part of the Pastor of Hermes." In a footnote on page 58 of James White's book, he refers to a statement by D.A. White, or Waite, where he claimed that some individuals just about worship Codex Sinaiticus. He then states that it was an inaccurate claim that Sinaiticus was about to be burned, but rather it was wrapped in a red cloth. And this is from on page 58. This after alleging inaccurately that before being found, Sinaiticus was about to be burned. One will note that the steward at St. Catherine's kept the manuscript in his cell, wrapped in a red cloth. Hardly the way one treats trash. But as we already saw, while it is very true that in 1859, on his third visit, Tischendorf was presented by the monk with Codex Sinaiticus that was indeed wrapped in a red cloth, that manuscript contained the very pages that, according to Tischendorf himself, had been in the bin ready for the fire on his first visit in 1844. So while Sinaiticus was not found in a waste paper basket in 1859, but it was presented wrapped in a red cloth to Tischendorf, it was in fact found in the basket ready to be burned in 1844, which is when Tischendorf took those 45 pages. So James White has either accidentally mixed up the account of Tischendorf, and he's combined these two visits that where Tischendorf visits on 15 years apart, and he's confused the fact that Tischendorf found the manuscripts and took the manuscripts, but then it was presented to him in a red cloth, and he's confused those two visits together, and he's basically ignored the fact that on that first visit the papers were ready to be burned. So for James White to say that the manuscript was not to be burnt is factually incorrect. I think he's actually deliberately misrepresented this story, or it could be that he's just accidentally mixed those stories up. But I think either way, this is quite serious implications for a scholar on the level of James White. So I have to say that while Mr. White, I have read much of what you have produced, and I disagree with James White here, that anyone who gets this story mixed up doesn't deserve to be read, as he stated in his own article. I think that James White is worth reading, despite him not being able to get the story correct and straight. The accusation that he's presented against somebody else. I just think that James White should be taken with a pinch of salt and not just blindly followed. So James White is undoubtedly a very well-studied and intelligent man. And I also think he is biased, prone to the odd mistake, which I suppose we all are. He is human, like the rest of us. And I think that sometimes he can be disingenuous in the presentations that he offers. This book, it's not a huge book, but like I say, this is the book by Constantine van Tischendorf, who outlines the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus. I'm going to go into looking into that in more detail at some point, on whether we can actually trust that story that that Tischendorf told about the finding of that manuscript, and whether actually what he states is true or not, and the possible reasons why he would make this up. And what I would recommend is this book by David W. Daniels, is the world's oldest Bible of fake, and it basically looks into Codex Sinaiticus. And so that there are a few scholars out there at the moment, David W. Daniels being one of them, Stephen Avery. Now, whether you want to class these as scholars is another thing. I know for a fact David W. Daniels has gone through all of the, seminary, and so he has all the qualifications. I'm not 100% positive on Stephen Avery, but I'm also not 100% on Nick Sayers as well, whether what qualifications he has. It doesn't really bother me about qualifications. I think that something is either true or it's not true, regardless of who's saying it. And there are some very, very well-read, well-studied people without the degrees and gone through colleges and stuff. And then you can get somebody like Bart Ehrman, who is completely qualified, one of the world's most renowned scholars, but he doesn't even believe that the Bible is true. He doesn't even believe in God. And certainly doesn't believe in kind of the resurrection, and he does believe in that Jesus is a real person. But then you have people like I can find him, people like Richard Carrier, who is an amazing scholar, which I've really enjoyed reading some of his books. And then you have Richard Carrier has got quite a few. I've got quite a few of his books. So this one, Jesus from Outer Space, he doesn't believe in he doesn't even believe Jesus is real, that he was a real person. Yet this man probably has qualifications that if all you're doing is appealing to qualifications, he is perfectly adequate and has the qualifications in order to be able to assert what he's asserting. And if you just go on qualifications, then you should be listening to what he says. he doesn't believe in a historical Jesus, just the same as Robert M. Price. Again, he is a fantastic scholar, but again, he just doesn't believe that Jesus is real, that he's a real person. So I wouldn't base everything that I believe just on scholarly work. And whether a scholar states something, they can make errors, as I've shown with Bruce Metzger, with some of the things that he states. And when it comes to Bart Ehrman, I've said this many times, that Bart Ehrman's works are very, very biased. And he's certainly writing to a certain demographic of people that are he's certainly not writing to Christians. He's not writing for those. He's writing, I would say, the vast majority of people that use Bart Ehrman are either atheist or Muslim, to be honest. Those are the two. When I discuss with atheists or Muslims, they're the ones that kind of cite Bart Ehrman the most. So I had a discussion about with a Muslim recently, where he was citing Bart Ehrman incorrectly. Actually, he was saying that Bart Ehrman doesn't believe that Jesus was crucified, but I had to show him that while Bart Ehrman doesn't believe that Jesus is the Messiah and that he doesn't believe that he rose from the dead, Bart Ehrman certainly believes that that Jesus died on the cross. And in fact, actually, Bart Ehrman categorically states that the thing that we can know the most about Jesus is that he was crucified. It's the one fact about Jesus that he would say is the fact that Jesus was crucified on the cross, and he would categorically say that Jesus was. Okay, so I'm not sure really what else to talk about. I am going to do a video, as John brought up, regarding the Ezekiel's vision, or that he was shown, because I think it's quite an interesting one. For those that are purely interested in the God, the Trinity, and the discussion on the Trinity, I'm going to probably do something on that in the near future and go through some of the argumentations for and against the Trinity. But it isn't my main topic that I like to deal with. I kind of really, while textual criticism is probably one of my favorite ones, I kind of just go all over. So I've got writings from the visions of Ezekiel, to defending the KJV, to defending the Unitarian readings, to contradictions, argumentations against the Hebrew Israelites, argumentations against Muslims, argumentations against Catholics, Jews. So mine is quite eclectic in the writings that I've done. There's not one specific area that I kind of focus on. I'm always looking for the next study. I'm actually working on so I'm going to be doing a presentation probably the next video, my next presentation will be on looking into the LXX, the Septuagint itself, whether there was such a thing. Obviously, I've said in the past, I don't believe that there is such a thing as a Greek Septuagint. So I'll discuss that. So I've been working on updating my work on that and the evidence for and against it. But I've also been looking at the who wrote the Gospels, because I've done a few videos over can we trust the Gospel of John, when were the Gospels written, and so I kind of followed along that, and I've been doing study into when who wrote the Gospels rather than when they were written. So if we go to the when were the Gospels written, and I did that, and I think I presented a reasonable argumentation of why we don't need to accept the Gospels being late Gospels, written late. I'm going to present, or try to present, kind of an argument of why there's no reason to not accept the 4 Gospels being written by who they're attested to be written by: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And why the arguments against it being Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John really just don't stand. And they're already assuming late authorship, and it's kind of assuming that these Gospels were anonymous. So, and there's no reason to assume that the Gospels were anonymous. That's what I don't believe that there's any reason to accept that they were written anonymously. But yeah, so we'll look into that, or maybe not even so why they were written anonymously, because it can be kind of argued that they were, but why they don't, inside the Gospel, why they don't say I Matthew wrote this Gospel. I think John does do that, actually. I think John certainly hints that it was him that wrote the Gospel of John in chapter 19. I think that, chapter 21. It's at the end of the Gospel. It's one of them anyway. But yeah, so I think that at least John argues that he wrote the Gospel. And also the book of Hebrews as well, because the book of Hebrews is attested to, normally it's either anonymous, we don't know who wrote it, or it's Paul. Those are the two kind of main postulations, I would say, that it's either anonymous or it's written by Paul. I think that there's possible argumentation that the book of Hebrews was written by Luke, and so it's possible for me. I think that it's possible that that it is again Paul, but it's actually written by Luke, and I think that there's reasons to maybe believe that. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there. This one has been a fairly short one. I'm okay with that because I've got work to do tonight anyway. So yeah, if there isn't anything else to discuss, I'm quite happy to continue on. If anybody would like to come on, or if you would like to make any comments, and I'll try and interact with them. If not, I will probably call that a day for today, and then I will try to present maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, depends when I can get enough time to do that presentation. In fact, maybe the next video I will do would just be for, I might just do the Ezekiel one on my next video, because I'm still working on the Septuagint. Although I have written the argumentation of why I don't believe in a Septuagint, I'm always adding to my studies, and I think I've maybe found some information that I could possibly add to it. I might even have a quick look at the Ezekiel one just to see whether I can add to it. It's just I am really busy with work at the moment, so I'm trying to fight with my study and doing the work as well. So it all depends on how I feel on the evenings, on whether I can put any effort into doing the studies. But I thought I could have been doing a study tonight, but I decided to do this instead, just to see if anybody was interested in a discussion or a chat with anything. Obviously, as there hasn't really been too much interaction, and I've just gone on to the discussion of Tischendorf and the discovery of Sinaiticus. Like I said, I'll probably call that a day now. Is coming up to an hour. I may go on for another 2 minutes if just to see. If not, we'll finish up on the hour. Thank you very much for watching along. I know that there's more people watching interact. That obviously happens, and I know that I really need to try and figure out how to do a video where the American audience is more able to interact and watch along live rather than on on repeat on YouTube, because I know that it's kind of towards the end of the workday in America rather than evening, but it's 10:30 in the evening here, so it's really difficult for me to. Otherwise, I suppose I would probably have to do a video at 2:00 in the morning here for it to be more visible, or more the people in America be able to interact with it a little bit more. Anyway, okay, I have rambled on again as always, but that's just the way that I am. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to contact me at any time. You can do so on my website. There's a link there to my email, www.followingtruth.com. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It does help. And obviously it allows you to, if you click like the bell, it will allow you to know when I'm coming on. So yeah, make sure you subscribe, click the notification. I think it's just notification bell, and it will allow you to know when I'm coming on live or when I post a video. I'm doing most of the videos now live rather than creating the video. I think I probably prefer to do it that way. So I shall continue on doing it like that. But yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next video. Maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday. We'll see. But I'll post a link, and you can have a look. Okay. Thank you very much.